the friendship group that you have when you're heading into your 30s is pretty much going to be the friends that you will have for life. At this point and stage of life, you're not doing the things that you were doing when you were in your teens or your 20s. People are developing into getting married or having children and building a family. And therefore, that group gets solidified and is unlikely to extend. But when I'm talking about friendships, I'm talking about those solid friendships, those ones that are considered to be your day ones, the ones that are ride or die. Because building relationships or friendships outside of this is quite difficult when you get to a certain age. Trust, loyalty, etc. is hard to come by from, let's say, outsiders, foreign invasion, because you haven't known these people for long enough or build a strong enough bond or relationship to move forward with them. And it's also a matter of time and energy. You're wanting to preserve that for the very things that you have kind of built in your 20s, etc. So we then find that a lot of the time, especially when we're mistrusting of life, when we understand it a bit more and we've had a greater experience and exposure to how life works and some of its entrapments and failings, we then find that we believe that there are only a few good men and potentially women that are out there to build friendships and relationships. You know, it starts from very early, from preschool years. So when you're a toddler and you're going to school, you're formulating relationships there and then with people that you don't know. But obviously, you tend to gravitate towards the people or the children that are similar and likable to you. And then you move into primary school and you think that those friends are probably going to be your friends for life. But then you realize as you get to secondary school, it's a whole different ball game. The population of the school is much greater, and it's the law of the jungle. People move into factions and so on. And even there, you think that the kids or the teenagers that you mostly hang out with are going to be there with you for life. You know, I transitioned then into college, and then that's when you get a real reality check, because a lot of the time, you know, it's teenagers heading into adulthood, and the law of the jungle changes again. You're pretty much isolated from your previous friends, and then you're having to build up more relationships there. But with each step, it feels like you're mistrusting of people because you see a lot of BS take place, and politics become even more prevalent as you get older. You move on to university, and there again, you form new relationships. All in the while, you know, I had friends that I had built relationships from outside of school and outside of all the institutions. And till this day, those are some of my best friendships that I have. I can call them real day ones. But a lot of people fall off. They fall by the wayside. People that you very much thought might continue to be friends. But then you have a realization that these people just were not really for you. You was more or less tolerating them. You had things in common, but they weren't grounded in a deep relationship or friendship. They were just good for that moment, and you were good for that moment with them. But then reality hits, and you don't align or resonate with them so much. Their characters are pretty much flawed, and we're all flawed in some aspects, but They're flawed in ways that you just no longer wish to share that energy or be around that energy and so on. And it's not that they were bad people, but they just didn't align. Almost like the values of politics and so on. Not that I'm wanting to get into politics, but it's pretty much that, do we share the same values, principles? Do you have character? You know, the gift of good judgment. Not so much. So a lot of people, you have to filter out and leave them behind. And therefore that leads you into, when you go into the workplace. I've had a number of jobs, and I've come across a number of people where I can count on probably one hand, since those jobs and being in those institutions such as school, the amount of people that are still around. There's probably tiers of friends that I have where you can say there are your day ones, solid friends, maybe a tier above that are good friends, a tier below where it's strong acquaintances, and then acquaintances below that, and then anyone else, they've been filtered away. And that's the way of life. But we've hit a new age. We've hit a new realm of friendships where now people are very much introvert. It's difficult nowadays to make friends, especially even when you're younger now, because a lot of things are taking place in the technological space. They're very much online. You see it with streamers, YouTubers, etc., content creators, influencers. They're building very much a, let's say, tribe. And in that tribe, you can form proper friendships, proper relationships. Because when you're spreading your message, you're spreading your philosophy, your ideas, your understanding of the world, people who share and align with those ideas, understandings, etc., they gravitate towards you. And that's why it's important to put out the message of your experience of life, your understanding of it. Because even though it feels like outside there may be a few good men, the advancements of technology has allowed us to reach out to the deeper depths of the world in different countries, continents, etc., across the globe, to formulate a strong pact of people who you may never have come across once before. Yet they're willing to support you, they're willing to financially help you, to give your message, give your greater understanding of the world, the meaning that you give to them, to build something strong. So it's no longer that when you get into your 30s that it is the case that the people that are there now are going to be the only ones. The advancement has allowed us to build relationships that we never once thought we would have. And therefore, we're at the greatest time to build a family, to build new friends and partners, relationships, etc., to create a better world.